This is In Time, a music history podcast. On this show, we examine the shared links between music, art, literature, philosophy, science, and every aspect of culture, because it's all connected. Join us this week to see how our artistic heritage is influenced by what came before it and where it could possibly go next. I'm sure that if you're listening to the show right now, you're probably pretty familiar with DNA. Is that a fair thing?
Sure, why not? Sorry, I wasn't ready to start.
It's okay. If you've never heard of this substance, or maybe you slept through your high school chemistry class or biology class or whatever class you learned about DNA in, I'm pretty sure it was in middle school.
Biology. You learned about DNA in middle school? I mean, I'm sure we were taught that DNA is a thing that existed, but
sure. It was somewhere in there with the cell wall and the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell.
Really?
Yeah.
That is wild to me.
Yeah, different culture. Anyway, as it turns out, most living organisms on Earth share about 97% of their DNA, which means you're pretty closely related to a fly.
Is that true?
I mean, not technically speaking, but most of the DNA that makes up matter itself, or makes up us, is pretty similar.
Those two things are drastically different. First, I have to tell you that not all matter is made up by DNA, and also
okay, all organic matter that has that is an animal, like our cat right here. Animals. Thank you.
Animals,
good morning.
Not plants.
Do plants have DNA? Anyway,
plants have RNA.
Well, that's fair. Anyway, though. So,
he's a musician.
Humans and chimpanzees actually share 96%, while fruit flies and bananas actually share 60%. So I lied. But you're probably wondering why we've just wasted 2.5 minutes talking about DNA here.
Yes, Zach, I am.
Well, as it turns out, music has a DNA structure. And it's embedded in every single note.
Metaphorical DNA structure.
I mean, if you're going to be picky about it, this...
We've met.
If I play this note right here, what you're actually hearing is a lot closer to all of the notes played at once, with that one being the one that you really hear. This is the Overtone series. And this week on In Time, a music history podcast, for our premiere of our second season, third if you're watching on iTunes because they're picky like that, we are discussing something that we kind of overlooked at the beginning of last season, which, shout out to Amanda Kemp, friend of the show, who is the only music major of all of the hundreds of people that we went to school with that listened to this show or have heard at least one episode, especially the first one, that bothered to email me and say, you forgot the Overtone series.
We got an email?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Amanda.
So this one goes out to you, Amanda. We're going to cover what makes music sound the way it does. But first, some quick promos. As we've already stated, this is our second season, and we're coming up on our show's first birthday real soon.
Holy socks.
Yeah, so thank you for all of those who have listened throughout this entire time. If you found us recently, welcome. We have learned much over the last year, and it's all because of you.
It's true.
While we're talking about things we've learned, social media. I'm not great at it, but we're getting better. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at InTimePod, and head on over to our website at intimepod.com, where you will find show notes for this and every single episode of the show. And these are detailed show notes, not just like me pasting an Amazon link.
It's true. Zach puts a whole lot of effort into the show notes. So if you have even a passing interest in practically anything that we've mentioned during the show today, you can absolutely find additional information on the show notes if you're interested for where we get any of our sources that aren't about DNA. Yeah. They are all linked there. He's very fastidious about it and puts a lot of effort into it, and they're actually very helpful and interesting if you're looking for more information. So check them out.
And while you're at our website, click on that donate button and consider donating $1, $5, $10, or $20 to help us improve our infrastructure. So that way, when you're watching us on YouTube, because we are on YouTube now, it doesn't look like we're recording from the Soviet bloc in, say, 1987.
Which is a comment we heard.
Yeah. I have... Anyway.
If you donate $25, you could help us get a new light.
If you donate $80, if you're really nice, you can help us get a new camera.
Or if 4 of you donate $20, we could get a new light.
Or
new
if
camera.
80 of you donate $1. It's amazing how math works. Anyway.
We know more about math than we know about RNA.
This is true. And I don't know much about math. So with that out of the way, let's get on with it, shall we?
Let's.
In order to talk about music, we have to talk about why it works in the way it does. It's not all just the 1 chord leading to the 4 chord, which leads to the 5 chord and the 1 chord. There is actually an underlying structure as to why that happens. And the rocking of this keyboard is making me very nervous, especially as the cat gets on it. But, if it falls, it falls. If we die, we die. Who cares?
The cat won't die. She's very nimble on her feet.
I've had this thing for 15 years. Anyway. And it got broken at a party once that I loaned it to a friend. The one time I ever loaned it out. Anyway, though.
And that's definitely the only time it's been broken, and not at all in the last 3 weeks.
Musically speaking, as we have discussed on this show, we have an alphabet whenever we're talking about music.
It's true.
It is the musical alphabet of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
I'm sure hearing that in that order was not at all frustrating for any of you musicians out there.
Yeah, well, I teach high school music, and if I started on C, they'd get confused. But for those of you who are anal retentive about it, we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. But why is that? Why is it that music itself, especially in the West, sounds the way it does? And it doesn't, well, I guess it kind of all could sound like Da Baby if you wanted it to, but it doesn't. So why? Well, as it turns out, there is an underlying structure to music itself that essentially what we did when we tempered or tamed our musical notation system or our musical sound system favored certain notes over others. Now, other systems of tuning favored other notes. But no matter what system you're using, it all comes from this general series of notes known as the Overtone series. What the Overtone series is, essentially, is the dominant sound or the composite parts of the dominant sound of a note. And that's a really weird way to phrase that.
It was a very strange and not particularly helpful way to stage
let
that.
me,
but
let me
here
explain.
we go.
When I play this note right here, this C, what you are actually hearing is not just this note by itself. It's also the same note, but an octave higher.
Mm-hmm. This is easily demonstrated with a real piano. If you hold down the octaves and strike a bass note, the higher octaves will ring if they're undampened, because the vibrations from the bass note have caused the higher octaves to ring.
Or if you're Leonard Bernstein, you could do it by holding down the sustain pedal, hitting the note, and then, letting up immediately.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we've got this keyboard here, but if you have a real
strings.
Yeah, if you have a real piano though, this sounds a lot better.
It's true.
Like, this is just going to be a weird approximation. Sorry. Unless someone wants to give me a free piano, this is what we got. You can make all donations via intimepod@gmail.com if you want to get rid of it.
Do you really want a piano? Because I could probably get you a free piano.
Why are you just telling me this now? Okay, anyway.
I know. I have all manner of
do.
little old ladies all the time going, hey, does anybody need a piano? My friend is getting rid of hers. And I usually say, no, thank you, because we have like 6 pianos in the building and we don't need another one.
Yes.
All right. I can, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, essentially speaking, whenever you're playing one note, you're actually playing all of them. But what you hear is this one, because it is the one that is the fundamental.
That's a vocab word for this week.
It is.
Fundamental.
So, the way it works is this. Picture a string. And this is Pythagoras talking here. Picture a string. Mm-hmm. If you play it and it gives you a sound, awesome. When you half that string, though, you get the exact same note, but now it's higher. So if this was my sound on a string, if I cut it in half, it would sound like this. Now, you're probably thinking, if you cut it in half again, it'll, be the next C, right? It'll be this one here. Well, that's actually not the case. Because the next one that comes up is actually going to be this note, G. So, thus far, whenever you play this C right here, what you're actually hearing is not only this, but this and this. And I'm going to do that with keeping the damper pedal down just for the benefit of your listening enjoyment here. Now, here's where things get freaky. If it wasn't already. The next note is E, which gives us our lovely C major chord in a very open voicing. I'm pretending that I can hear it.
They don't need to know that.
Oh, well. Now, this is when things start to get weird. Because if you half that again, you wind up getting another G.
Sure.
Adding on, so C, C, G, E, and G. Now, here comes another C. Is the next one. So, just to recap, C, C, G, E, G, C. But now things get closer together. And you wind up getting a D, and then finally another E. Oh yeah, sorry, there's also a B flat in that sequence. So, the full sequence, if I was to actually stack it up in order and not forget what I'm doing and not misread my script as I was looking at things, is C, C, G, E, G, B flat, C, D, E. That is just one note. Every single note on this keyboard follows that system of overtones. Octave, fifth, third, fifth again, seventh, octave, 2, and then third again. For those of you following along at home and you're not music theory people, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. For those of you
following along at home and you're not music theory people, from the bottom of my heart, I'm very sorry.
Yeah. However, the reason why this is important is because it actually dictates how our music sounds because of the relationship of those overtones. So, whenever we're playing along and we've got our music going and you're going... The next chord that you would normally hear could be a 4 chord. More than likely, though, it's going to be a 5 chord, a G, which was our third overtone. The dominant, the fifth, the G to your C, the peanut butter to your jelly.
The mac to your cheese.
In Western music is all about the relationship between tonic or fundamental and dominant or fifth. Everything. It doesn't matter what music you have, even if it's deliberately trying to avoid that particular relationship. I remember one time Jared Swope put me, just shoved some earbuds in my head once. He was like, dude, and the awesome thing is that there's not a single 5-1 in this entire song. And I don't care. And he never spoke to me nicely again. I'm sure that was my fault. Anyway, because I'm a jerk.
I mean, I don't care is not usual response.
I know. Anyway. Which is why that relationship, though, between the 5 and the 1 is so important. Because it is heavily based in the Overtone series. Which is also why the 3rd, that E, sounds the way it does. Because it falls in between those two. Mm-hmm. So far, if I was just to take the notes that we've got that I played, it is, without any duplicates, C, D, E, G, B flat, and C. Now, of course, we could do this in every single key. We're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
Especially because I don't trust my transposition abilities at this particular hour that we're recording this. But that's another story entirely.
I'm going to skip it because it would not help to demonstrate anything useful.
This is true. What that actually winds up being is something called the pentatonic scale. Mm-hmm. 5 notes, pentatonic. C, D, E, G, B flat, and C. As it turns out, this is a universal concept. If music is the universal language, like we like to pretend it is, which it kind of is, it isn't, but it kind of is. If you're feeling emotions, it is. But the one universal constant in all music forms is that scale in some way, shape, or form. No matter where you are, no matter where you live, or no matter what time period you come from, that little pentachord, that little pentatonic scale, is the fundamental basis of all music that comes out of wherever you are. And it's because of the Overtone series. We can do things like play with it, like change our starting note. We can move it around. Different key just to mix with stuff. But no matter what, it's always the same. Which is actually why a lot of music of indigenous cultures, of music of the East, and folk music of the West sounds, I don't want to say primitive because that's the wrong word.
Yes, it is.
But it does not sound as harmonically dense as, say...
It's often a simpler structure and I guess simpler is really like, it's a more open structure typically, and there are often less moving parts than, like, classical music specifically. So,
getting back to the Western scale, though, because this leaves some spaces, particularly between these 2 notes and these 2 notes, and really these 2 notes also. We fill in those gaps. In fact, let's have a little experiment, shall we? I'm just going to play something. I am willing to bet that in that space, you filled in those notes that I didn't play. If you didn't, here's the full thing. Our Western tuning system is based on filling in the gaps between the pentatonic scale and creating the relationships between chord structures. This note, this chord, F, in the key of C, which is what we've been in, I'll just do this again. This is a little on the unstable side because the root note, this F, is exactly 1/2 step away from the 3rd of C, E. And we want this to go back. Likewise, part of what makes the 5 chord, or the 5/7 in this case, so powerful, musically speaking, is because this 3rd, right here, wants to go back up to C. And if I was to show you this keyboard right now, those two notes, F and B natural, tritones everywhere, are the least stable notes of this system. And it gives us a sense of emotional completion whenever those two notes resolve to a stronger note in the system. Mm-hmm. As far as music goes, the important thing to know is, regardless of what part of music history you're looking at, the question that every composer is trying to answer is how to get back from the dominant to the tonic.
Or occasionally how to avoid getting back from the dominant
to the
tonic.
True. This is very true.
Fun.
Over the next several weeks of the show, we're going to be going through some various time periods from essentially prehistory, which is going to be a fun one because all we get to do is speculate.
In the spirit of Bernstein, here we are.
Yeah, indeed. He does get quoted, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. To roughly the modern age. And the tale that we're going to tell is not only about the development of music, art, culture, and philosophy. Don't even try it, Kat. For those of you listening, the cat just tried to jump onto the computer that we're recording on, and that would not have ended well.
She didn't try. She was just thinking about it.
She was thinking about it. Anyway.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm just thinking about it.
But not only how is the story of music in particular about how you get from the dominant to the tonic, but it's how you can abstract that or bring it back into clarity. Because the story of Western art, from an artistic perspective, is always asking yourself what the theme is and asking if you want it to be clear or you want it to be abstract. And we're going to see this pendulum bounce back between the two. Mm-hmm. Until you hit the 20th century, and then all bets are off.
That's the truth.
But that, my friends, is a story for another episode. Until next week, this has been In Time, a Music History podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Singer.
I'm Susan Zeringer.
If you like what you've heard today, or you've been amused enough that you're willing to stick with us for the second season of our show,
come back and watch again, even if it's just for the cats.
Check us out at intimepod@musichistory.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at intimepod. If you'd like to come on the show and talk to us about anything you feel that we missed on this or any other program, send us an email at intimepod@gmail.com. Or if you just, want to talk to us, we're more than willing to, chat with anyone, really.
It's true. Send us an email. Thank you very much to our one person who sent us an email.
We've had a few We've had a few others. She's just the one that actually called us out on our shit.
Your shit.
My shit, because it was just me at the time. That's a different story, though. Anyway.
Oh, heavens.
It's a good time. You should join us here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Mm-hmm. Episodes release at 6 a.m. on Mondays. You don't have to listen then. But
I guess you can if you want to.
You could. Anyway, though, remember to stay in time, and we will see you next week. In Time, a music history podcast, is a Time Keepers production and is written, recorded, edited, and produced by the hosts. Be sure to check out our social media accounts, all at InTimePod, and head on over to intimepod.com where you'll find show notes and bonus material for your entertainment and continued education. Until next week, once again, remember to stay in time.